The old screen door made that familiar creaking sound, the same noise it had been making for 40 long years. As I pushed it open and stepped onto the wooden porch of the lake cabin, it felt like I was walking straight back into my childhood. Time seemed to stop for a moment. Everything hit me at once. The sweet smell of pine trees mixed with the earthy scent of damp soil after morning dew. The way golden sunlight broke through the tall trees, creating dancing patterns of light and shadow on the old wooden boards beneath my feet. Every single detail was exactly how I remembered it. From those magical childhood summers that felt like they lasted forever. But something was different this time. The air felt heavier, sadder somehow. We weren't here for fun like the old days. We were here to go through Aunt Carol's belongings, a job that none of us wanted to do, but someone had to. I could already hear Mark moving around inside the cabin. The soft clinking of dishes told me he was probably making coffee in the kitchen. My cousin Mark. We used to be like two peas in a pod when we were kids. During those warm, lazy summer days by the lake, we were always together. We built secret forts in the woods, dared each other to swim all the way to the tiny island in the middle of the lake, and whispered our biggest secrets to each other after dark in the upstairs bedroom. But that's how life works, isn't it? Time pulls people apart like threads coming loose from an old sweater. Mark got married, had kids, built his career. I did the same in a different city. Years passed by in a blur. We hadn't really talked, really connected, just the two of us in what felt like forever. Sure, we made polite phone calls during holidays and had quick conversations at family gatherings, but it was always surface talk. Nothing deep, nothing real. Now here we were, about to spend the entire weekend together, just him and me, sorting through a lifetime of memories. It felt important somehow, but also a little scary. What would we talk about? Would it be awkward? Would we still click the way we used to? I took a deep breath and walked into the familiar kitchen. The yellow floor covering was worn smooth in paths between the sink, stove, and table, evidence of decades of Aunt Carol's daily routines. The whole room felt frozen in time, like a museum of family memories. Mark turned around from the counter, holding two steaming coffee mugs. He gave me that slightly crooked smile I remembered so well from our childhood. But there was something different in his eyes today, something deeper, more serious than the carefree boy I used to know. Or maybe I was just reading too much into it because I felt nervous about this whole situation. "Hey, you made good time getting here," he said. His voice was deeper now, rougher around the edges than the teenage version I remembered. "Coffee's fresh and hot." He handed me one of the mugs, and our fingers touched briefly as I took it. There was a tiny, unexpected spark like static electricity, but warmer somehow. It was probably nothing, just my imagination running wild because of all the emotions swirling around. "Thanks, Mark. The drive wasn't too bad," I replied, taking a careful sip of the hot coffee. It was perfect, strong and comforting. Exactly what I needed. An awkward silence settled between us. The only sounds were the steady ticking of the old cuckoo clock on the wall, the same clock that used to terrify both of us as kids when it would suddenly spring to life and announce the hour with loud, mechanical bird calls. Mark cleared his throat and gestured toward the living room. "So, I've been looking around at all these boxes stacked everywhere. I'm not sure where we should start. It's pretty overwhelming." He ran his hand through his hair, which was now more gray than the dark brown I remembered. I knew I had my own collection of silver threads multiplying in my hair too. "When did we both get so much older?" "Maybe the attic?" I suggested. "That seems like it might be the most challenging part. If we get that done first, everything else might feel easier." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "Good idea. Let's tackle the hardest part while we still have energy." We climbed the narrow wooden stairs to the attic, flashlights in hand. The space was exactly as I remembered: low ceiling, dusty air, and packed with decades of forgotten treasures. Cardboard boxes were stacked everywhere, some labeled in Aunt Carol's neat handwriting, others mysterious and unmarked. We spent the first couple of hours working mostly in comfortable silence. The shared task gave us something to focus on instead of feeling pressured to make conversation. It was easier to let our hands do the work while our minds adjusted to being together again after so many years. We discovered old photo albums with cracked leather covers, board games with half the pieces missing, and outdated furniture covered in white sheets like sleeping ghosts from another era. Each item told a story, brought back a memory, connected us to the past in ways that words couldn't. Then Mark found something that made us both stop what we were doing. He carefully lifted a wooden box from behind a stack of old magazines. It was intricately carved with swirling patterns that seemed to dance in the dim attic light. "Do you remember this?" he asked, holding it out toward me with reverence in his voice. My breath caught in my throat. Of course I remembered. It was our treasure chest, the one we had buried one magical summer when we were maybe 10 years old. We had filled it with our most precious possessions, a perfectly round stone from the lakeshore that caught the light just right, a bright blue feather from a jay that had fallen near our fort, and a handwritten note promising to be best friends forever, no matter what happened. We had dug it up before leaving that summer, making a solemn vow to keep it safe always. Aunt Carol must have been the one to store it away all these years, keeping our childhood promises protected. "Wow," I whispered, reaching out to trace the carved patterns on the lid with my fingertip. "I can't believe she kept it safe all this time." Mark carefully opened the box, and we both leaned in closer. Inside, nestled among our faded childhood treasures, was the note. I could see both our handwriting, his loopy and earnest, mine smaller and more precise. Even back then, the words "best friends forever" were still clearly visible despite the years. We looked at each other, really looked, and for the first time since I'd arrived, all the awkwardness melted away completely. It was replaced by a wave of nostalgia, so strong it felt like a physical presence in the dusty attic air. The years between then and now seemed to collapse, bringing us right back to those innocent summer days when friendship felt like the most important thing in the world. Mark smiled again, but this time it was different. It reached his eyes, creating those familiar crinkles at the corners that I remembered from when we used to laugh until our stomachs hurt. This wasn't the polite smile of distant relatives meeting at family functions. This was the genuine smile of the boy who had known all my secrets, who had built impossible dreams with me in blanket forts. But there was something else layered underneath that smile, something thoughtful, maybe even a little melancholy. He was looking at me not just as Sarah, his cousin from childhood memories, but as the woman I had become. All the experiences, challenges, and changes that had shaped me over the years were reflected in his gaze, and in that moment, seeing the weight of his own life's journey reflected in his eyes, I realized I was looking at him completely differently too. This wasn't just Mark, my childhood playmate. This was a man who had lived a full life, faced his own struggles and victories, grown and changed in ways I knew nothing about. The air in the attic suddenly felt different, not tense, but charged with the quiet energy of rediscovery. We were seeing each other with fresh eyes, recognizing both who we used to be and who we had become. "Should we look through some photo albums?" Mark suggested, his voice softer now, more intimate than before. "I'd love that," I replied, settling down beside him on the dusty wooden floor. We pulled out album after album, each one a journey through our shared history. There were pictures of us as gap-toothed kids, grinning wildly as we posed on the dock, in our swimsuits. Awkward teenage photos from family barbecues where we were trying so hard to look cool but just looked uncomfortable instead. Young adult pictures from college graduations, both of us beaming with pride and hope for the future. Each photograph was like a stepping stone, helping us cross the river of years that had flowed between us. We laughed at the ridiculous outfits we used to think were fashionable, pointed out relatives who were no longer with us, and shared stories sparked by the images. "Oh, my goodness, look at Uncle Bob's shorts," Mark chuckled, pointing to a faded snapshot. He wore those exact same plaid shorts every single summer. I think they were practically falling apart by the end. "And Aunt Carol's enormous sunglasses," I added, giggling at the memory. She was convinced they made her look like a glamorous movie star. She wore them everywhere, even inside sometimes. The easy rhythm of shared memories flowed between us like a gentle current, washing away years of polite distance and surface-level conversations. It felt so natural, so right, like slipping into a comfortable old pair of shoes and discovering they fit even better than you remembered. We found pictures from the summer I turned 16. There was one photo that made Mark pause, me standing by the edge of the lake, looking impossibly young and full of uncertain dreams about the future. "I remember that exact day," he said quietly, his finger hovering over the image. "You were so upset because Jenny Miller hadn't invited you to her pool party. You thought it meant you weren't cool enough or pretty enough." I had completely forgotten about that silly teenage drama until he mentioned it. Oh wow. Yes, I was being so dramatic about the whole thing. You sat with me on the dock for hours that afternoon, Mark continued, looking up from the photo to meet my eyes. I told you that Jenny Miller was an idiot if she couldn't see how amazing you were. I said you were way cooler than her and all her shallow friends. A faint blush rose in my cheeks as I remembered my youthful heartbreak over something so trivial. You were so sweet to listen to me complain about something so silly. Mark's gaze held mine, and again I saw that look deeper than just remembrance, carrying an echo of that long-ago protectiveness, but layered with something new. It was appreciation, maybe even admiration for the person I had grown into. Well, he said, his voice taking on a gentle seriousness that made my heart skip a beat. I wasn't wrong, was I? His words hung in the dusty air between us, simple on the surface, but carrying unexpected weight. It wasn't flirtation, it felt like genuine recognition, a quiet acknowledgement of my worth both then and now. It disarmed me completely, made me feel truly seen in a way I hadn't anticipated when I'd driven up to the cabin that morning. Dust particles danced in the beams of afternoon sunlight slanting through the small attic window, and the silence that followed wasn't empty or uncomfortable. It was full of understanding that didn't need words. We weren't just cousins doing a necessary chore anymore. We were two people who had found each other again, reconnecting on a level that surprised us both with its depth and authenticity. The afternoon continued to unfold like the pages of those old photo albums. The attic yielded more treasures and more triggers for conversation. We found bundles of old letters exchanged between our parents over the years, revealing sides of them we had never known existed. We discovered Aunt Carol's high school yearbooks and laughed at the earnest, hopeful expressions of teenagers from a different era entirely. Each discovery was another thread weaving us back together, creating a new tapestry of connection, built on the foundation of our shared past, but enriched by our present selves. The awkward strangers who had greeted each other with coffee that morning were gone, replaced by two people who were genuinely excited to be rediscovering their friendship. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, casting longer shadows through the attic window, I realized this weekend was going to be about much more than just sorting through Aunt Carol's belongings. It was going to be about sorting through our own history and figuring out what we wanted our future relationship to look like. And for the first time in years, I felt truly hopeful about reconnecting with someone who had once meant the world to me. Inscriptions. The work was emotionalizing, but also strangely cathartic. As sun began to dip lower, painting the dusty air hues of orange and gold, we decided to tackle the main bedroom downstairs. It felt even more personal, filled with Aunt Carol's everyday tincture books, her knitting basket, the faint scent of her lavender perfume still lingering in the air. We moved with a quiet reverence, folding clothes for donation, setting aside items for other family members. Mark picked up a small, framed photograph from the bedside table. It was Aunt Carolyn, Uncle David on their wedding day, and beaming. She missed him stomach, Mark murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Uncle David had passed away years ago, and Aunt Carol had never really been the same. I came to stand beside him looking at the photo. Shirley did remember how she used to tell stories about their courtship. Like it was a grand adventure, he nodded. Chasing the edge of the Fermesh, kept his fishing hat on the hook by the door right up until his voice trailed off. I rested a hand gently on his arm, a simple gesture of shared grief and understanding. He didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his head slightly, his eyes meeting mine over the photograph. The look was back, intensified by the shared sadness it held. Empathy, vulnerability, a profound sense of connection forged in that moment of remembering a loved one. It was as if the carefully constructed walls we'd built around ourselves over the years just dissolved, leaving us standing there, twizzles recognizing the shared pain and dystory in each other's eyes. It wasn't romantic. It was deeper than that. It was raw, unfiltered recognition of family of loss, of the enduring power of love and memory. He swallowed, then managed a small watery smile. She was a good woman, Carl. The best, I agreed softly, my hand still resting on his arm. The contact felt necessary grounding. We stood there for a long moment, united in our grief and our rediscovery of each other, Thessalon's amplifying the unspoken emotions whirling between us. The setting sun cast long shadows across the room, wrapping us in a warm, melancholic embrace. It felt like a turning point, a quiet deepening of the bond we were unexpectedly building. We finished sorting the bedroom in a state of quiet companionship. The earlier ease had returned, but it was now underscored by that shared moment of vulnerability. It was as if a hidden door had been opened between us, revealing a space of mutual respect and emotional honesty we hadn't known existed. We packed the last box of clothes, taped it shut, and Mark carried it out to the stack near Theodore. I wandered over to the window looking out at the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the fiery sunset. Like a mirror, the familiar silhouettes of the pine trees stood dark against the brilliant sky. It was actually beautiful, imbued with the bittersweet weight of memory. On the surprising tenderness of the day, Mark came back into the room, stopping a few feet away. He didn't speak, just stood there, watching the sunset with me. Thesalence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, companionable. While he said, his voice quieted. Strange, isn't it? How a place can hold so much history, so many feelings. I nodded, still looking out the window. And how coming back can stir things up. You didn't even know we're still there. He moved closer, standing beside me at the window. Our shoulders were almost touching. I could feel the warmth radiating from him, a steady presence he haven't felt disconnected. He began, then hesitated, searching for the right words. To our past, I mean, to family. In a long time. He turned his head looking at me, and there it was again, that look. Intense, open, searching. It wasn't just seeing me. It felt like he was seeing asterisk through asterisk. Married into the core of who I was, acknowledging all the years, all the changes, all the shared blood and a store that tied us together. Me neither, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. I finally turned from the window to face him fully. The fading light softened the lines on his face, highlighting the kindness in his eyes. There was an unexpected intimacy in Thatchered gaze, a profound sense of being truly seen and understood by someone who had known me my entire life, yet was only no truly seeing me woman I'd become. And I was seeing him too, not just Mark the cousin, but Mark the man with his own struggles, high sound history etched into his features. He reached out, not to touch my face or hand, but just rested his fingertips lightly in my forearm, right where my hand had rested on his earlier. The touch was electric, not in a passionate way, but in an emotionally resonant way. It felt like a spark jumping across a gap, igniting a deep, dormant understanding. Sarah, he said, his voice low and earnest. I'm really glad we're doing this together. The simplicity of the words, combined with the intensity of his gaze and the light touch, felt momentous. It was the culmination of the day's shared memories and rediscovered bliss. It was the unexpected event, not a dramatic happening, but a quite profound shift in perception, a mutual acknowledgement of a bond that ran deeper than either of us had realized. It was powerful, respectful, and utterly surprisingly real. We stayed like that for a moment, caught in the intensity of shared understanding. The touch on my arm wasn't passive or suggestive. It felt like an anchor, a point of connection in the midst of swirling emotions and memories. Then, as if by mutual, unspoken agreement, slowly withdrew his hand, and Thespel, while not broken, gently eased, heckled his throat, a slight flush creeping up his neck. We should probably think about dinner, he said, his voice returning to a more normal register, though the warmth remained. Yeah, agreed, feeling a little breathless. Ye good. The charged atmosphere lingered, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was more like the air after a summer storm, cleansed, fresh, and humming with a quiet energy. We moved back towards the kitchen, the familiar space now feeling subtly different, imbued with the new dynamic between us. We made dinner together, a simple meal of pasta and salad, moving around the small kitchen with an easy, almost practiced rhythm. Despite the years of separation, we talked more, not just Abutan Carol or the past, but about our present lives, our jobs, our kids. His grown mind, nearly there. The small joys and frustrations of middle Agathir were no more intense gazes or emotionally charged touches, but then found respect and openness remained. It was in the way he listened intently when I spoke about my struggling garden, the way I genuinely laughed at his story about a disastrous work presentation. We were seeing each other as complete people, peers navigating the complexities of life, carrying the shared foundation of our childhood into a new adult understanding. After dinner, we sat on the porch swing, mugs of tea, warming our hands as the stars began To pepper the darkening sky, the lake was a sheet of black glass reflecting the pinpricks of light. Above the rhythmic creak of the swing was a soothing sound, a familiar lullaby from summers past. "It's good to be here," Mark said quietly, looking out at the water. "Even though it's sad, it's good." I knew what he meant. The sadness of Font Carol's passing was undeniable. Butchering the task, the memories, and this unexpected reconnection had brought a layer of comfort even. "Healing it is." "Yeah, agreed. I was worried it would just be hard oppressing me too." He turned slightly towards me on the swing. "What? It hasn't been like that, has it?" "It's been different," I finished for him. He nodded, a soft smile playing on his lips. "In the dim light, different, better." We sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, watching the stars, listening to the gentle lap of water against the shore. The weekend wasn't over. There were more boxes to sort, more memories to unpack, but something fundamental had shifted between us. That look, that moment of profound emotional connection, had changed the landscape of our relationship. It wasn't about romance. It was about recognition, respect, and the surprising depth of familial bonds. When you finally take the time to truly see the person standing beside you as you eventually headed up to the guest room, leaving Mark still sitting on the porch, felt a sense of quiet gratitude. Gratitude for the shared past that had shaped us, and gratitude for the unexpected present moment that had allowed us to see that past and each other with fresh eyes. It was a reminder that connections can evolve, deepen, and surprise you, even with the people you think you know best. The cousin I'd arrived to meet that morning was still there, but I now saw him, and perhaps myself, through a different, richer lens that felt like a discovery worth cherishing.